Hello everyone, in this video we are going to discuss about new things in Neutralinojs v4 release. This release was released recently with a lot of modifications to each component of the Neutralinojs project. For example, we modified a lot of things in the CLI, and also the framework had also a lot of changes, and that client library also released with many changes, and we have modified the sample template as well. Regarding the documentation, we improved the documentation with a better contribution guide, and also an overview about our extension system. Finally, some details about update API also was added to the documentation. And we are going to discuss about the code base as well. We implemented new DevOps related things in our code base. So in this video we are going to go through about those things as well. Finally, we are going to discuss what are things planned for next year as well. Very first, let's get started with the CLI part of Neutralinojs. To show the updates in this CLI component, I am going to create a new project with a new CLI. Very first, let's get started with the CLI component of Neutralinojs. If you check the documentation, you can see how you can upgrade or install the latest CLI. In this section, you can see how you can install Neutralinojs CLI globally. This command will install Neutralinojs CLI latest version globally into your computer. If you don't want a global installation, you can try Neutralinojs CLI command with npx as well. You can see the full documentation here about creating apps and managing apps, but this is about basic things regarding app management using new CLI. If you need further details about CLI, you can see this section. Under this new CLI section, you can see all the commands offered with new CLI component. I already installed the latest version of Neutralinojs CLI into this computer, so I can verify it by entering a new version like this. So it says that I am running the v8 version of new CLI. Let's get started by creating a new project. As you already know, you can enter new create, and the application name I am going to use test v4 as the application name. As usual, it is going to download the sample template, and it is going to fetch binaries and the client library release as well. Now I am going to cd into that directory I created with new CLI, which is test v4. Here we can run the application using new run as usual. Let's discuss about the latest modifications happened with this CLI component. Compared to this implementation, earlier we used some kind of polling mechanism to detect the application reload state. So for an example, if there's some kind of file change or resource change within the application and it is detected by new CLI, basically creates a server, local server, and it is going to show like the page needs reload or not, the application needs reload or not. Then from the application side, the client side of the application is going to poll to that local server created by new CLI, and it is going to see whether the application needs to be reloaded or not. If there's a reload needed, then the application is performing a reload. In the previous version, if you run the application with a new CLI, and if you open this DevTools section, and if you check the network tab, you will see a lot of calls going here, because like I mentioned, the previous version of new CLI polls to that new CLI's internal the local server to detect file changes. But right now we changed the approach, so right now I can demonstrate how it works. So I am going to modify one resource file in the application. So this is the application I created. I am going to open this style.css file, and while I am changing this style.css file, I am going to check the network tab and the DevTools area of the Neutralinojs application. Here I am going to change the font size of this header section. Here I am going to change maybe 20 to 30 and save it. As you can see here, the application is automatically reloaded, but we cannot see some kind of network calls going here, the additional network calls going here to detect file changes. Right now the Neutralinojs CLI's auto reload feature works like this. So if we modify some application resource like I modified here, then the CLI is going to send some kind of WebSocket message to the Neutralinojs process. Then Neutralinojs process is going to direct that event into this application instance. Then application instance can auto reload the application because the application's resource is modified and the content need to be reloaded. There is another update regarding binary version and also the client library version in Neutralinojs CLI. To explain that, I am going to open the application source now. So this is the sample template downloaded by the new CLI. I am going to open the configuration file. Earlier each CLI had some kind of related Neutralinojs binary version and also the Neutralinojs client library version. Right now we modified that approach, and here you can mention any version as you wish for the binary version and also for the client version. Then the CLI will download those versions automatically. For example, if you need to use the previous client library version, you can modify the client library version like that. Then you can enter new update to update binary. So for example, now I am going to change this client library version to 2. Then if I enter new update, then it will revert my client library version of this project to v2. So if we need the previous version back, which is v3, then I can enter new update again here. Then it will update the client library back to the latest version. Also there are some modifications to the new build command as well. For example, I am going to build this project using new build to demonstrate that. So if you check the disk directory of this project right now, here there is no res.new file, but there is resources.new file. We renamed the resource file's name because the previous version, which is res.new, doesn't give full meaning about the file, but the resources new explains the file name further. Also, this new build command now supports extensions. We are going to discuss about extensions a bit later, but note that this new build command now supports extensions, and when you enter new build and if your application has some extensions, those extensions will be copied into the application bundle properly. Those are the modifications related to the CLI component of Neutralinojs, and make sure to upgrade your CLI before creating Neutralinojs applications. Now we are going to discuss about the framework's latest things. So this is the most important part of the video, I think, because this explains the core parts of the core modifications of the framework. First, we are happy to announce that we implemented a built-in auto-updating feature, so you can implement auto-updating into your applications with the v4 release right now. v4 release also comes with a new concept called extensions API, so we are going to check this concept later. But this feature is about extending the Neutralinojs native API with any programming language without even compiling the framework with the C++ compiler. First, we can check about the auto update API of Neutralinojs. We added this documentation section explaining about auto updater under the how to section. This auto updating feature is a way to update application resources of the user's computer via the application instance by downloading some resources from the internet. There are just 2 steps to complete auto updating feature in your application. So first you need to create something called update manifest. This update manifest is basically a JSON document that holds details about the application package. Basically the details about your next application package. In here you just need to add the application ID, version and resources URL. This resources URL points to the latest version of your resources bundle. The next step is to use the update API and write code to enable auto updating feature. There are 2 API functions in this updater namespace. The first thing is check for updates method. The check for updates method accepts one parameter, which is a URL, the manifest URL. You just need to provide the manifest URL into check for updates. So it will basically return update manifest if the manifest is valid. After that you can use the second method, which is the install method in update API. Once you call the install method, it will basically download the latest application bundle, and it is going to replace the existing application bundle in the user's computer. Finally, you can call the app.restart method to restart the application instance to see the latest changes. That's about update API. You can read more details about update API using this how to section, and you can see full description about the update API spec using this API documentation section. Now we can check about API extensions of Neutralinojs. This documentation explains you about how you can create Neutralinojs extensions and why you need Neutralinojs extensions. But right now I can give a very quick introduction to extensions. As you can see here, Neutralinojs comes with a built-in API. You can use this file system section to create directories, so create files, so list directories likewise. And also you can use this debug section to use the internal logger of Neutralinojs. Likewise, there are different APIs that are embedded into the Neutralinojs framework. However, the application developers need different APIs. For example, some developers may need MySQL connectors, and some developers also mentioned that they need some extended version of this storage. This storage is basically a simple key value storage, but some developers mentioned that we need some kind of advanced storage via this Neutralinojs storage API. Like you already understood, the concept of Neutralinojs is to stay lightweight. If we add many things to the Neutralinojs API, the bundle size will become heavier. So that's what we don't need to do. As a solution, we introduce Neutralinojs extensions, and this extensions API is basically a way to extend the existing native API of Neutralinojs with custom backend code. The custom backend code can be written in any programming language. For example, you can write extensions using Node.js as well. For now, I can show one example extension that is written using Node.js. Right now I am at the Neutralinojs framework source. I am going to open the source code. If you check the contents inside this bin directory, you can see extensions. So this is where I placed that sample extension code. Inside the extension directory, we have a sample extensions folder. So this is the sample sample extensions project that I created using Node.js. So this is the main file. There are several steps to connect with the Neutralinojs main process. So that is explained in that documentation that I showed. Right now I am going to run this example to demonstrate how the extensions are working. Extensions are not enabled by default, so you need to enable it explicitly by providing a CLI argument or by modifying your configuration file. Right now I am going to enter enable extensions here to enable extensions via the command line. As you can see here, the extension sends some message to the application. The extension said hello app. So if we check the extension log here, the application said something to the extension as well. Extension printed hello extension, and that is sent from the application side. Likewise, you can build up a bidirectional communication between extension and also with the application instance. Also, there is a method to get the details about running extensions. To demonstrate that, I am going to open the dev tools and going to enter some JavaScript code here. So there is a method called getStats under the extensions namespace. Going to enter it with await because I need to see the result of the method. So that method is in extensions and its name is getStats. So if I enter like that, it will basically return information about running extensions and loaded extensions like this. So if you need to send the message to one of extensions, you can use neutralino.extensions and dispatch function. If you need to send a message to all extensions, all loaded extensions or connected extensions, you can use this broadcast method. Now we improved the exec command API as well with the latest release of the Neutralinojs to demonstrate that I can enter Neutralinojs exec command API call, neutralinoj.os.exec command, and here for now we can provide ls. Now if we see the output, earlier we got only the combination of standard error and standard output, but right now we get more detailed information about the process. We get exec code, PID, standard error output, and also standard output content likewise. Now you can obtain more details about the process using exec command. Now there is another update regarding this exec command API. Now you can provide the standard input also to the process via the exec command. For example, now I am going to create a child process using this cat binary. Here I can provide additional arguments to the exec command using this options object here. Now I can provide like this std in and something as the standard input. Here we can provide string as the standard input. Now I am going to provide maybe hello. So here I am providing standard input to the cat process. So as a result we can see hello as the output, right, in the standard output section. Here now it works. Likewise you can provide standard input as well. It also, if we check the output, now we have more details with the exec command API. There's another update regarding configuration and the static server module. I'm going to close this development version of application and going to open the previous application that I created. So this is the previous application I created, this test v4 application. So if I see the source of the application, we can see a new property called document root. So this is a newly added property, the configuration, and to the static server module. This property basically sets the root document for the static server. So earlier we had this kind of configuration, right? We didn't have this document root thing, but we had the URL, and the URL configured like this, right, in the previous version of the Neutralinojs. So it says that we need to open this application URL with the application startup process. So now if I execute the application, and if I check the current URL of the application using window.location property, and we can use the ref property as well. As you can see here, it is saying that we are using some kind of subdirectory, right? That document root thing help us to remove this part, but use subdirectory to load resources. Now I can demonstrate that. Now I can demonstrate that by changing the application configuration. So now going to close the application and modify the configuration. So if we use like this, I am going to use URL as the root, and I am going to mention we need to set document root as resources like that. Now if I execute the application again using new run, here we can see the window location property. So as you can see, the application runs without a subdirectory in URL, right? Likewise you can use document root and URL properties to configure the URL like this. Also we modified the window create method's response as well. We included the process details to the window.create method response, because that window.create method spawns a new process to create a new window. Then if we need to control the child window from the parent window, we can use that process details to control it. So for example, I can execute sample code here. I can use the window dot create and some URL. Here I can load the root URL because I am using the document root right now. So if I enter like this, the window will work, and this method will return PID here. So you can use this PID to kill the process if you want. Also, we offered the way to create Neutralinojs applications with any programming language as the backend programming language. So that's about the different way of using extensions API. You can use extensions API in two ways. Like I mentioned before, you can use extensions as child processes of the Neutralinojs main process. Then you can extend the API using extensions. And there is another way to use Neutralinojs extensions API. You can export Neutralinojs process as a child process from your own source files, and you can still communicate with the Neutralinojs process using the extensions API. So we added about that into this documentation under the extensions section of how to guide. Here you can read more details about it. So this is basically a way to use extensions API in a kind of different way. You can use Neutralinojs as a child process, and you can use your own process as a main process. Then you can build up a communication mechanism between those two components using the extensions API. So first you need to use this property. So this property basically exports authentication details of Neutralinojs process instance to this auth info JSON file. Then from your original process, from your main process, you can pick up those information. Then you can connect with the Neutralinojs process in order to communicate with the application, right? Using this approach, you can build the Neutralinojs application backends with any programming language using Python, for example, and maybe using Go likewise. We are happy to see some community projects using that approach in the future. We did some changes to the client library as well with the v3 release of the client library. In that release, we changed the ready events behavior a little bit, and also we introduced a new global variable as well. It is called NL app version, and that contains the value of the version attribute in configuration file. Like I mentioned before, the window create is also modified a little bit, and also we removed the app.keepAlive native method from the framework. First, I can mention about the ready event changes. Earlier in the applications, we had to use that ready event always if we need to trigger immediate native calls. For example, in this main.js of the sample application here, when you are triggering some kind of immediate native calls, we had to wrap those with the ready event callback, right? But right now we can directly call native calls. We can call for example, we can call this os.show message box immediately right after calling the init method. Right here you can enter any kind of native method without wrapping your code with ready event. Like I mentioned before, we added that NL app version global variable to the client library. If I enter like this, then it will return the version of the application. So this variable, this global variable is useful when you are implementing auto updating feature to check the version, check the current version of the application with the remote resources version. We modified this sample applications JavaScript file a little bit by restructuring the code. Also, we added the notice to this sample application. This note says that this is basically a sample application. You don't need to follow this structure, but this is a kind of simple application that demonstrates how Neutralinojs application can be implemented. And also importantly, you can use any kind of front-end framework to build application. This application built using vanilla JavaScript, but you can use any front-end framework, right? We improved the documentation as well. If you see the documentation already, you can notice we added data types to the documentation. If we check maybe one function, this create directory function, you can see that we added this data types. And now you can see what kind of data type you need to provide for each parameter. And also we updated the documentation by adding this distribution overview, how to release the application to your audience, and likewise. And also we updated documentation with this contribution guide as well, how to contribute Neutralinojs code base. This documentation explains further about how to build Neutralinojs from source and how to test it, likewise how to work with both client library and framework if you're going to contribute. So this is about contributors. We did some modifications to the code base as well. So if we check the main repository of Neutralinojs, you may already notice that we implemented some GitHub actions to semi-automate our releases, and also we integrated the new integration test suite. When there's a new commit to the repository, we are running a full test suite right now. Earlier we were just building Neutralinojs project from source, but right now we are running full test suite when there's a particular commit added to this repository. If you are interested in how these things are working, you can check more details from this workflows section. Inside this workflow directory, you can see our GitHub action. So this test suite workflow is responsible for running our test suite, and this is responsible for creating the release zip. Like I mentioned before, we are doing our releases semi-automatically. So this workflow is responsible for creating the release zip. Then we are going to pick up that zip file and going to make the release manually. And there's another workflow to analyze our code. I already created two videos covering these two workflows, this create, release zip, and also test suite. If you are interested, you can check those videos. According to the feature request from the community, we created the roadmap for the next year. If you go to this roadmap repository, you can see the roadmap for the next year. We archived the previous roadmap to this location. You can still browse this previous year's roadmap, and you can browse the latest roadmap from this repository. We added some goals already from the community's feature request. We are going to add screen details API and some improvements to the window namespace. So those are the updates came from the v4 release of Neutralinojs. We will keep adding things to this newly created roadmap when we are receiving some more things from the community, and we are accepting donations as well. So if you would like to support our development via donation, you can check out our official website to make a donation. In this video, we quickly went through the latest updates from the v4 release. We discussed about extensions, and also we discussed about the update API, and some modifications came through client library CLI likewise. But these are just quick updates, but I am going to create separate videos for each thing, like extensions API, auto update, and likewise. I am going to explain the extensions like features with practical examples by creating some extensions with popular languages like Go. See you in next videos.